When you were asked to engage in the study, were you ever asked to reach a certain conclusion?
Never.
Was there ever any influence other than the data and facts on your analysis?
There's never been any influence. The influence, again, it's whatever the data shows.
When you engaged in whatever studies you undertook that you'll explain to the jury, were you given any direction or limitations on what you could or should do?
No.
When you received the information, did you understand, regardless of the result, it would be provided to everybody?
I guess, generally, yes. I mean, I go through the data, I give you the results, you do with them whatever you see fit.
Okay. And in this case, when you decided to engage in that study, had you had an opportunity to review the ring video footage from Mr. O'Keefe's home on the morning of January 29, 2022?
Yes.
Tell us how you went through your study, how you began and the steps you took, please.
Sure. Probably best on the slides. So one of the things we first did was to get an exemplar Lexus. What does exemplar mean? It just means I got the same exact year, make, and model vehicle as Miss Reed. So Miss Reed's vehicle is on the left-hand side, taken during my inspection. And then I found this exact same year, make, model, manufactured the same plant, everything Lexus in Texas. So even though it looks like a European plate, it's a Texas plate. Purchased the vehicle, had it shipped out to California. So I verified that the Lexus is in fact the one I got, the same exact one as Miss Reed's. These are all the standard equipment. Miss Reed's is on the left. My exemplar is on the right. It says Reed Lexus TIS, that's Toyota Information Services, the Toyota Information System. So I ran it through TIS, which is the umbrella program under which TechStream runs. I also ran it through My Lexus, which is the Lexus website, and then started about doing what's referred to as a photogrammetric analysis of the video.
Can you explain to us what a photogrammetric, help me with the word, photogrammetric?
Photogrammetric. We're doing photogrammetry is a photogrammetric analysis.
What does that mean?
It's just a big fancy word to saying you're looking at data and photographs, and what we're trying to do is take two-dimensional images, say you get from video or photographs, and knowing some information about the photographs and some of the dimensions of things in the image, get or convert it to a three-dimensional space. In other words, be able to get exact three-dimensional measurements out of that two-dimensional image. So I had the video, just to show the provided video that I was given. So Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. I don't know if you noticed, but there actually is contact between the vehicles. So one of the first things we wanted to do is determine the frame rate, which is how many video frames are played per second. Your normal kind of video camera has about 30 frames per second. Your standard movie is 25 frames a second. You know, a modern IMAX is like 60 frames a second. The frame rate of the camera, how many images it shows per second, because video and films are just single images played really fast, so it looks like motion. And so determining the time between each frame tells you how much time occurred. So if we know the time between each frame, and then we can figure out how far the vehicle moved, distance divided by time is speed. So we put it through a couple different programs. This is called AMP5. We got 19 frames a second. This is a specific forensic program called Axon Investigate, 19.8 frames a second. This is a publicly available program called FFMS. Same thing, 19.8 frames a second. Another program, Media Info, 19.8 frames a second. Anyways, 5 different sources, we're getting 19.8 frames a second. So then what we've done is add information now. So now that we know how many seconds each frame represents, we now put a clock back in to tie that into time. So it's the same exact video, except we have a frame counter now, and we have a time. So we have some information now on the time between each frame. So here's frame 0. This is frame 265. We're 13 seconds into it. Here's frame 305. Notice you see brake lights on the back wall here. Notice how they're not super red because you still have reverse lights on. Now they all go off. So the Lexus brake lights have been turned off at frame 353. 356. Lexus brake lights begin to come on. 357, they're back on. Lexus comes to a complete stop at frame 369. 384, the reverse lights turn off. So now look how red this is because we no longer have the white reverse lights in it. And you can see the Lexus starts to drive forward. So frame 825, this is after the Lexus has left the scene. But notice the tracks in the snow. So we have very definitive locations for the wheels of the Lexus. We lay over a grid on the various frames. So we then took the images and did what's called clarification, which is where you overlay images from multiple versions or multiple views of the same vehicle, and it helps sharpen the image, but it slightly dulls the color. So you get a little cleaner, crisper image. So here's Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle before clarification, after clarification.
Excuse me, Earl, pardon my interruption. Can you get numbers of the slides as you're toggling back and forth? Sure.
Absolutely. Okay, I'll make an effort. So slide 76. You're welcome. Going to slide 77. We're going to focus in on this area here. So what we will actually show is where the snow was displaced in these 2 spots, spots right across from here and right across from here. You could focus your attention on those. Slide 77. So slide 78. To bring us all together, we went out to Mr. O'Keefe's residence and took a scan, a laser scan. So you see the laser scanner over here. Laser scanner is right here. Fence hasn't changed position. The camera's changed a slight position. We can account for that. So here's the subject video. We have the correct resolution. There's a new camera. It's going slightly faster frame rate. That just means we have different times between frames on the new camera, but we're simply using it for calibration to the old camera. It's the same container for the MP4, and it's using the same video codec. A video codec is how the computer encodes the video.
Next slide number, please.
Oh, yes, thank you, Your Honor. Slide 79. Slide 79, part 2. So really, we care most about is the resolution. So slide 80, you can see these are what are called control points. So from the laser scan, we locate these various points. So the 3D scanner knows the exact position of all of these points on slide 80 in the image. And so what we can do is use this information in conjunction with the video to create a scaled version of the video. So when we have 3-dimensional images or 3-dimensional measurements, we can then use that to give us some 3-dimensional information from our 2D video. So there's the points on slide 81. Slide 81, second part, we're basically just fading in. So what you see now, if I go back to the beginning of slide 81, this is the picture from the video camera. And then what you see here is, which is barely any difference, and that's because what we've done is we've now overlaid the points from the laser scan. So now each one of these little speckly points, we know the exact 3D coordinates of those. So we can now know the exact position of all these fence posts, all the positions on the driveway, and we can use that to calibrate. Going to slide 82. So using that information, it's called solving for the camera. We verify that we have appropriate residuals, meaning we don't have too much error. Slide 83. Okay, subject video. Then this is the subject video with the control points overlaid on it. That's the subject video where we're phasing in the laser scans of the scene, 84. So this is both on slide 84. I'm just toggling between the point cloud and the video. And what I'm trying to illustrate is how well we were able to overlay the point cloud onto the video data. So, for example, if you say watch one of these fence post points up here while I toggle between the video there's a laser scan, there's the video. So we've done a good job. Again, the residuals show that we've done an adequate job of matching the data. Slide 85. So what I'm doing here is toggling between, this is the video of the car. Remember I told you I went out and I inspected Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle and did a laser scan of it? So we're now taking that laser scan of the video, or excuse me, of the vehicle, and overlaying it onto the car in the video. So this is the video image. That's the laser scan laid on top of it. So we know all the dimensions in the laser scan. We know all the dimensions in the scene of this. We have the tire tracks. We can create and take data points along the tire tracks. Create a map of those. So green is the right rear. Again, the vehicle's backing out, coming, slide 87, coming out this direction, backing here, stopping, pulling. Pulling forward towards the bottom of the screen. Backing out here, pulling forward like here. Slide 88. So this is the Lexus lined up. This is when the Lexus has come to a complete stop. This will be maximum engagement. Again, this is just toggling frame 88, showing that we have the time and the frame number. 369 on the same slide. We've now overlaid the Lexus laser scans on top of the image of the Lexus. So there's the video image, a still image that we took from the video, and here's where we overlay the laser scan of the Lexus. So we've overlaid the laser scan of the Lexus onto the Lexus. We've overlaid the laser scan of the Chevrolet onto the Chevrolet, and we've overlaid the laser scan of the scene onto the scene. So now what that allows us to do, we now know the position of everything in there. And we've also tracked the position of the tire tracks. So that's what it looks like if you overlay the computer model of Ms. Reed's vehicle onto the tire tracks. Oh, my apologies, Your Honor. slide 89, and then I'm just toggling slide 89 where I turn the vehicle off so you can see how the tire positions match up. Another toggle of slide 89, how the tire positions line up with where the end of the snow was. From all that information, again, we lined it up in the video, we lined it up in the scene, we have the two vehicles. We can get the exact position of the vehicles when that Lexus stopped. So when that Lexus stopped, that's going to be the maximum engagement. So from that information, we can get the angle of the vehicle, we can get the degree of overlap, the impact configuration, and it's hard to see because of the angles and because these vehicles are not at right angles to each other, the exact contact. Now, I mentioned, and we're on slide 94 now, that contact on the rear of the Chevy Traverse. So you can see we actually, I mean, you can't see. So we took a whole bunch of data points within those two areas where the snow got dislodged, and we're looking at where that is. So if you look at that on the vehicle, so this is where it is on the rear of Mr. O'Keefe's Chevrolet. You see it's about 25 and a half inches above ground, 32 and a half inches above ground. Here's Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. So these marks are kind of, this is the Chevy Traverse words, are approximately right here. Again, I had the opportunity to inspect Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. There's no damage where these marks are. So sure, it knocked the snow off, but it wasn't sufficient to cause damage to his vehicle. We then mapped that data onto Miss Reed's vehicle to look at where that height is. So you can see the only contact marks are down at the bumper level. I mentioned how that bumper sticks out. This is exactly where you'd expect it. So the only evidence of contact is nowhere near the upper tail light. I emphasize the word upper tail light because it is right in line with the lower tail light. But yet the lower tail light also was not broken. So again, 25 and a half, that's 24 right here, 25 and a half. That's 24 right here, 25, 25 and a half. That's right where that scuff mark was. It's also right at, again, the level at the top of that light. This light is not broken. I've looked at the front of it, I've looked at the back of it, I've looked all around it. It's not broken, and it sticks out further than the light above it. So using those positions, matching the overlay of the vehicles, we can get the speeds from that. We know where the Lexus is. We know how much time it is between each frame. So we know how far it moved. And so what we know is that when it first came to a stop, right before that, it was going about 0.7 miles per hour. So realistically, somewhere between a half to 1 mile an hour, just to account for some variations, but definitely going 1 mile an hour or less at impact.
Slide over, please.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor. Slide 99. That's the dimensions. Slide 102. Similar to what I said, no damage to that light, no damage to Mr. O'Keefe's Traverse in that area. And then if I could, I would like to go back because I realized I skipped over something. So this is slide 85. So this is Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle before contact. Huh. I don't know what happened this time. This slide shows that there was snow here, now there's no snow there.
Dr. Welcher, did you look on the driveway after the touching between the two cars to see if you could see anything on the snow at the back of Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
So referring to this slide, this is after the Lexus is pulled away. Looking in the snow, I see nothing in the snow.
Were you looking for anything in particular?
Of course I was. I was looking for taillight fragments.
In any of the videos that you have that show Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle after the defendant's Lexus touches it, do you ever see any remnants or shards or fragments of taillight on the ground?
I do not.
When you did your analysis and study, trying to include or exclude this touching as the source of damage to the defendant's Lexus rear right taillight, did you consider speed as part of that analysis?
I did. I considered speed, and then again, knowing we have the positions of the vehicle, we looked at the degree of overlap, and there's only about 2 to 3 millimeters of overlap between the vehicles, which is insufficient to cause the tail light that's recessed in from the edge on the right rear of the Lexus to contact the rear of the Chevrolet.
Considering all the data and analysis that you did you come to a conclusion, to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty, whether the right rear taillight of Ms. Lee's Lexus was broken or damaged during the contact with Mr. O'Keefe's car at around 5:07 a.m. on January 29, 2022?
That impact did not break or crack that taillight.
Is that your opinion?
That's my opinion.
Is that to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty?
That's to a high degree of engineering certainty.
You mentioned there were 3 areas of study, and we've been through 2.
Correct.
Could you tell us what you focused on your 3rd area of study regarding this case?
So the 3rd area of study, I'm now focusing in on the injuries, the at-scene physical evidence, taillight fragments, broken glass, things of that nature.
Okay. And when you conducted your studies and reached conclusions, did you, in your PowerPoint, provide slides to help explain your process and inevitably your conclusions?
Yes, sir.
If you can take us through the 3rd section of your efforts regarding this case, specifically your efforts to identify the different pieces of evidence and your conclusions about a collision in this case.
Absolutely. Slide 104.
Please.
So this is a...
Is this 105, Dr. Welcher?
I'm sorry, 105, yes, sorry. Slide 105. This is a picture of Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, forearm, hand, and wrist. In anatomy, your arm is defined from your shoulder to your elbow, and then from your elbow to your wrist is your forearm, and then this is your hand. So technically, when you say arm, it really means from your elbow to your shoulder. Most people call this whole thing arm. It's actually the upper extremity. Arm is from shoulder to elbow, elbow to wrist is forearm and hand. So you can see I wrote arm and forearm. So arm, elbow to shoulder, elbow to wrist is forearm. So looking at the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's arm, forearm, as well as his hand. So this is me. I'm actually 6 feet, half an inch tall. What you see in the upper right is the coroner's examination report for Mr. O'Keefe. He's 73 inches tall. That's 6 feet, 1 inch tall. At this time, I was 220 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of this incident, was 216 pounds. So I took measurements of myself. I'm actually wearing the same make and size shoes as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand of jeans as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand and size shirt of Mr. O'Keefe. You see the Lexus in the background. We have matched the height to the Lexus. What I'm showing here is both my height, and then keep in mind where the height of this wing is relative to my right eye. So now I'm wearing, in addition, the same shirt and shoes, same type of sweatshirt, and actually the same kind of baseball hat. We tried to determine the exact glass from the Waterfall grill. Found out they were getting different ones at different times, but I ordered my glass from the same distributor that Waterfall Grill ordered their glasses from. So you can see in my right hand here, I have a glass. Here's a glass. It looks similar. It's from the same location. And then in the lower right photograph, what I've done is I've rolled up my sleeve, taken the sweatshirt off, and I'm going to look at how this contact pattern lines up. So the first set of slides, I'm simply standing next to the Lexus. We know we have a broken taillight. We know how scratches on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. I'm seeing how those may or may not relate to the height and position of the taillight.
Dr. Welcher, if you could back up one slide, I have a question for you. In the middle photograph, at the top of the Lexus, there's like a rim. What do you call that?
I call it a wind wing. I mean, it could be a wing.
Okay, thank you.
Air dam would be another. Okay, so I then set about to do a little bit of testing with the Lexus. The first test you're going to see is me just walking backwards, or actually sideways, into the Lexus. What I've done is I've painted the Lexus right rear tail light with what's called grease paint, and sort of like paint, but it doesn't dry. And then I have backed up sideways, side shuffled into the Lexus with my arm out, see what the damage pattern looks like, or basically where someone of Mr. O'Keefe's height's arm would contact the rear tail light. So then what you see is I've shown the photographs again. I show the paint transfer onto my arm. The yellow grease paint on my hand was to show where my hand would hit the taillight. And so just kind of me walking slowly sideways into it, the approximate location of the taillight, and I'll line it up with the broken taillight in a second, lines up with the approximate location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
Dr. Welcher, let me ask you a question. When you're engaging in these demonstrations, are you attempting to try to show exactly how Mr. O'Keefe was struck?
No. So we don't know exactly how he was struck, and pedestrian impacts are extremely sensitive to exact angles, and so where exactly your foot is, whether your foot's off the ground, can have an effect on where you end up after that. We just don't have enough information in this case to determine all that information. We know the taillight was broken. We know the glass was broken. We know we have damage to the rear of the Lexus. We know we have lacerations in Mr. O'Keefe's arm. So I'm trying to see if there's any correlation between all those.
Well, can body posture on a clip or a side slight collision change the trajectory or the injury?
Of course.
Can the way somebody moves or reacts before impact change it?
Sustained.
What are other things that can change the trajectory of the person and the injuries?
So for example, if you get hit and knocked off balance, or clipped and knocked off balance, you can take additional steps that'll affect how far your body travels. If you have one foot on the ground versus the other foot on the ground, affects how the body rotates. If your arm is at 90 degrees or 85 degrees, will affect the kinematics. we attempted to model different possibilities, and we're getting results that were all over the map. Small changes in the pedestrian position give you huge change in the output. And so from the tech stream data, we don't know exactly when in the tech stream data he was hit. So we don't even know the exact impact speed. In most pedestrian reconstructions, you typically have a point where the impact occurred, like where the person was, like in the crosswalk, for example, and they get hit and their tire leaves a rubber scrub. That's called the area of impact or point of impact. You then can look at how far they were thrown and using some laws of physics, calculate how fast the car had to be going. Well, we don't have that in this case. We don't know exactly where Mr. O'Keefe was on the roadway when this happened. Sorry, I'm about to go to the next slide.
Without having an exact point of impact or an exact speed or an exact body position, are you able to specifically replicate the actual collision in the way Mr. O'Keefe's body would move?
Exactly replicate? No. And again, in terms of how he would move, again, we don't know where exactly on the roadway he started. So in terms of how he moved, that's a function of where he started. We don't know if when he was clipped, he took an additional step before falling backwards. So that will change how far you are off the roadway. So the impact, which you'll see in a second, even at 2 miles an hour, will induce rotation of the body. So depending on the speed, the higher the speed, the more rotation. So if I may, so slide 111, this is simply showing where I walk sideways, how this lines up with the location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm. Here's the post-contact scuffing on the taillight. Here's a picture of Miss Reed's vehicle on the right-hand side. So now I said, okay, that was me walking into the car. Let's have the car drive into me. I did this at very low speeds. And you'll see, and we'll throw this from 2 different angles. That's me showing I'm doing test 2. This is from a camera that we have pointing down at it. This is the speed. You'll see it's only about a 2 mile an hour impact. But even a 2 mile an hour impact redirects me back and causes me to rotate and take a step.
Ron, can you approach, please?
Yes. And what slide is this? I think I just can't see it. What slide is this?
114.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One moment, Dr. Welcher. When you were showing us this video, you walked to the side of the passenger side of the car, didn't you?
I did.
And why did you do that?
I was discussing with them what to do.
You were discussing with who what to do.
The driver.
In no way were you trying to imitate or give a demonstration of what you believed Mr. O'Keefe's movements to be.
Oh, no. This speed's just 2 miles an hour. I was having a discussion with the driver about what we needed to do to conduct the test.
So when you walked up to the passenger side, it wasn't to replicate a study or a movement or give an opinion?
No, that walking
simply...
had nothing to do with this case except for me instructing the driver what to do.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sorry about that.
No apology necessary. Could you go back to the beginning when you were explaining this so we can go through it?
So this is the dynamic test 2. So again, this is the view from behind. just to avoid the confusion, I will start it here.
Which speed is the car traveling?
You can see it. About 2 miles an hour.
Okay.
Excuse me, Your Honor, that is the objection that we spoke about.
Oh,
and that I
okay.
would like to look-
All right, so that's noted, Mr. Lessing.
So similar to the other test, this is the post-contact image of the transfers onto my arm. Actually, the yellow paint, you can see from my hand is here. This is from the arm and forearm. Here's the paint transfer pattern.
And that slide number,
I'm
Dr.
sorry,
Welcher?
I'm terrible with that.
That's
Slide
okay.
116 now, that was 115.
Thank you.
Slide 116. What I've done is I've taken these yellow lines to show the extension of the components on the rear of the exemplar Lexus. Then I've done this extension of those same components on the rear of Miss Reed's Lexus and shown how the approximate location of the fractures in the taillight match up with the approximate location of the contact of the arm onto the taillight.
Dr. Welcher, do you have any indication of how Mr. O'Keefe's arm was bent, what angle it was bent at?
Not exactly, but for these to be taillight shard fragments, they would need to be in the area of the taillight, but it could be further up. We know from the police photographs that there was a damage to the rear body panel in the area I'm searching here. So it's possible his arm was a little higher up and the glass hit the rear of the Lexus and caused that damage.
In the bottom right,
Excuse me, Your Honor, objection and speculation.
I will strike that last part about the glass.
Thank you, Your Honor.
the purpose of the circle is for what, Dr. Welcher?
To show, in this case, primarily the location of the lacerations up on the arm, the upper part of the arm, and that they match up with the locations of at least the one remaining shard in the rear taillight of Miss Reed's Lexus.
Looking at the picture of the Lexus, bottom right middle, are there any marks on the Lexus itself that you took note of?
Yes, it's on the next slide.
Thank you.
Actually, it's 2 slides. So there, again, this is the evidence marker. There was a horizontal scuff. We know Mr. O'Keefe had blue jean type pants on. There's a scuff in the area that would approximately correspond to hip level for Mr. O'Keefe.
And next slide, please.
Yes, ma'am, 118.
Thank you.
Did you describe what you saw on the bottom right-hand corner photo as well?
I believe, yes, I did. That's the scuff that lines up with the approximate height of Mr. O'Keefe's right hip. So then I included previous image that you've seen, slide 119, with the reconstructed photograph of the rear taillight, showing where some of the fragments are. You can see where those fragments are relative to the curvature of the taillight. They'd be in the area somewhat centered within the region of the 2 yellow lines on slide 119.
Is there anything about the photograph in the top right-hand corner that's important? If so, could you zoom in and show us?
So again, it's showing that this is when it's, I believe, in the Sally Port at the police station, showing that scuff on the right rear body panel.
Did you see any similar scuffs in the middle back of the car?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Did you see anything notable as far as damage to the middle back of this Lexus?
The middle,
Yes.
like back where the doors are.
But with the middle of the back of the car, did you see any similar damage to the middle? or
There
the
were
left?
scuff marks that ran along the bumper.
Okay, continue, please.
So this is just showing his jacket he was wearing, that the puncture marks coincide to the marks on his arm. This is from the autopsy report. A couple things it notes: a 1/2 centimeter abrasion on his right lateral knee. He's got a laceration on his right eyelid. That corresponds to the height of that thin rear wind wing on the back of the Lexus.
Your Honor, I'm going to object.
Sustain.
Thank you.
How tall was Mr. O'Keefe?
73 inches tall, 6'1".
And how high was that wing from the ground on the back of the Lexus?
It was about it's about 5 feet 11 inches, maybe 5 feet 10 and a half.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you notice anything about Mr. O'Keefe's right knee?
I noticed there was a 1/2 centimeter abrasion on the right lateral knee.
Did you note how high from his foot that bruise was on his knee?
We don't know the exact length of his knee. The abrasion appears to be right here at knee level. If you go back and look at where my knee is, that would be at the approximate level of the bumper.
And could you focus in on the bumper to show it relative to the height of your knee?
Sure. Oops. So my knee is approximately right here. This is where the bumper is. So the side of Mr. O'Keefe's knee will be in this general area.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty about the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm and forearm regarding its orientation relative to the broken taillight on the defendant's Lexus?
Yes. Your Honor, may I read my report, my opinion?
Okay.
The location and orientation of the laceration on John O'Keefe's right forearm and arm are consistent with the geometry and orientation of the right taillight of the Reed 2021 Lexus LX 570.
After considering these three different subjects that we discussed, the tech stream data, analyzing the touching between the defendant's Lexus and Mr. O'Keefe's car, and then your demonstrations regarding the injury to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, did you consider further evidence in reaching any conclusions as an accident reconstructionist and a biomechanical engineer?
Yes, I did.
Could you turn us to slide 124, please?
So this is some of the location of the physical evidence. Red plastic, clear plastic. There, his point of rest was indicated to be 7 feet off the roadway. There was a sneaker that was found near the curb. There were various fragments of taillight found in the snow on the morning of the incident, as to the afternoon of the incident.
Could you zoom in on those photos so that we can see the dates?
The date?
Yes.
Oh, sure. So January 29th at 5:46 p.m. This one's at 5:52. One's at 5:59. This one down here is at 546. So there were various fragments of the taillight that were ultimately pieced back together and determined to be from Miss Reed's right rear taillight. Additional evidence was found. This is taken on the afternoon of the accident, again around 5:50 p.m.
Could you zoom in, please, for us?
Sure. So what you see here is what was later identified as Mr. O'Keefe's right shoe.
And this slide number, Dr. Welcher?
Yes, ma'am. 127.
Could you show us the time and date, please?
January 29th at 5:50 p.m. So a series of photographs. Again, you can see on the right-hand photograph that this is the roadway, this is the curb. The grass will be up towards the top of the right image on slide 127. The shoe is found, up against, in the roadway, up against the edge of the curb. Baseball hat, again, acquired a same baseball hat. Baseball hat was also found in the snow. You can see.
I want you, before you move ahead, the baseball hat, could you give us a close-up view and also the date and time?
So that's where it's buried in the snow. These were taken on February 3rd. I'm not sure what time it was. There was also red liquid identified, I believe they indicated to be blood, in the snow as well.
And could you give it?
So, I'm going to sustain that objection and strike the last part of it.
I
So we
understand.
don't need to come to sci-fi, right?
Just describe the color of what you saw rather than what it was.
There was red coloration in the snow.
And could you give us that date if it's different than February 3rd?
I thought that was February 3rd as well.
Is there a date on the photograph to the left?
I don't see one.
Okay. Do you know if those photos were taken by the Canton Police Department?
Sustain.
Do you know when exactly those photos were taken?
I don't, except I have them dated as February 3rd. But I think that may just be the baseball hat photos.
Okay, can you continue?
Then we have photos of a broken glass. Surrounded by red marks in the snow.
Continue, please.
This, by the way, is the flagpole.
And that slide number, please, Dr.
Yes, ma'am, 129.
Thank you.
Slide 130.
Can you enlarge that and explain to us what that is?
Sure. So at the bottom, it indicates where it's from. So this was from a presentation I gave looking at pedestrian injury biomechanics back in 2005. And what it's showing is where what are the most common injuries in pedestrian impacts. So what it shows is head injuries are the most common injury in pedestrian impacts. So on the right-hand side, it's all injuries. You can see of all the individual study, the highest prevalence or highest or most common injury was head injuries. In those that sustained severe life-threatening injuries, again, the highest was also head injuries. So head injuries are very commonly associated with pedestrian impacts. This is anatomical drawings just to help you understand the anatomy. The middle section here is from Mr. O'Keefe's autopsy report. The lower right diagram, the green line represents the fracture lines, predominantly here, at least in the base of the skull. So in the biomechanical and forensics just means the legal related scientific industry, there's something called hat brim line or hat line analysis. And what it is it's looking at where the hat line, you can imagine, is where the brim of a hat would be. And what it is, it's literature that's looking at where head injuries from falls commonly occur.
Your Honor, I move to strike that.
I'll strike, I'm going to strike. I'm going
You
to
have
strike,
it removed from the screen.
yes,
please.
yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So that was slide 131.
No, that was 132. I moved it
sorry.
because you said to take it off the screen.
Your Honor, one more request to agree to not take that into consideration.
So jurors, when I strike something, that means don't pay any attention to
Thank you, Your Honor.
Continue, Dr. Welcher.
So, Your Honor, I need to go past that slide.
it. Okay, go ahead, go past it.
This is the next slide.
Okay, if you can continue.
Sure. So I provided peer-reviewed scientific literature that looked at a metric where they were publishing research trying to delineate falls versus blows or assaults. And so this metric is in that scientific literature. They looked at a total of 400 different events, 235 falls, 165 assaults. And so you can see where it says mandible. So mandible is your lower jaw.
Can you enlarge that a little bit, please?
Your Honor, pardon the interruption, I'm moving to strike.
Yeah, let's take that slide down, and I'm going to see you inside. Please.
Dr. Welcher, if you could return to slide 132. Actually, 133, Dr. Welcher.
Is that me or 132 or 133?
133, please. The next one after that.
So we did skip over 132.
We skipped over that one as well. Keep going. There we go. If you can enlarge that just a little bit for us.
Sure.
Now, you mentioned that there were studies that talk about guiding the difference between potential injuries.
Correct.
Okay, explain that.
Sure. So I gave 3 papers and someone's dissertation on this issue. They were creating a analysis methodology to differentiate whether the nature and pattern of injuries are more consistent with a fall or more consistent with an assault, or they're calling it blows.
Okay, can you walk us through what this chart means?
Sure. So this is their flow chart in terms of their assessment. So it starts at the very top. You can see they analyze a total of 400 events, 235 falls, 165 blows or assaults. So what you do is you ask yourself on the first set of arrows, you look at the mandible, the jaw. And M or S, as you can see at the bottom down here, refers to a simple fracture or multiple fractures. A is no fracture. Mr. O'Keefe has no mandible fracture. So that means we go down this row. It then looks at all facial fractures. So these are the bones that constitute the face. So if you have a facial fracture, you go to your left. If you have no facial fracture, you go to the right. So if you have some event, no mandible fracture, no facial fracture, what they've indicated that is predominantly associated with falls and not assaults.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In addition, did you do any further study on the force of a person falling back and landing on their head?
Oops, I did.
Could you
So what I did was I did what are called drop test. I took an anthropomorphic test device, ATD, which is just a fancy name for a crash test dummy, and dropped it backwards onto a hard surface to look at what happens if you were to, say, fall backwards and hit your head onto a hard surface. So on this particular photograph of Mr. O'Keefe in the upper left, there's noted to be abrasions above the fracture line in the area. You can't see that at all. You can see noted to be abrasions right here. Your Honor, I brought a hat. That was the one I used in my testing. May I put it on and demonstrate something?
Mr. Lacy,
If you would like a sidebar, or I can.
are you objecting?
I am objecting.
That's sustained. No, you can't put it on.
Okay. So I will show you the dummy test I did. Watch when the shoulders hit the ground and the head hits the ground. It creates kind of an arc path that will drag and slide objects up the head. So if you have something such as a baseball hat, it'll cause it to drag across the scalp, dragging it up to a similar location to where these abrasions are. So here's the testing. Again, this is the crash test dummies you see on television. This is myself. Me giving me similar instructions, telling them what we're going to do. I said, and watch. Shoulders come in, then the head contacts the ground. What you see is if you fall backwards and land on a very hard surface or hard surface, you'll get extremely high loads on the head. If you compare that to data in the science,
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Please explain what the chart is before you explain.
oh, sure. This chart up here?
Nope, the next page.
Right,
You can enlarge it, tell us what it is before you get into the details.
absolutely. So this is actually kind of a famous study that was published, one of the first studies looking at head fracture or skull fracture tolerances. So what you see, the portion at the back of your skull is called the occiput bone. So that bone, if you put your hand in the back of your head, is your occiput. So we're looking at occiput impacts. And what you can see is that when they took cadaver skulls and dropped them from as low as 40 inches onto a hard surface, they were getting linear fractures. And you can see even at 40 inches, there is called a stellate fracture. Stellate means star-like. You get a fracture that goes out like a star. So even at a 40-inch drop height, you have sufficient force when landing on a hard surface to cause skull fracture and a level 3 type skull fracture. So Mr. O'Keefe, again, is 73 inches tall. His occiput is about 4.6 inches down from the top of his skull. That means it would fall a total of about 73 minus 5 would be 68. So just under 6 feet. So 72, 4 inches under, so 5 foot, 8 inches is the fall height. What is data showing that even at a fall height as low as 40 inches onto a hard surface, you can get fairly severe skull fractures.
Thank you. Dr. Welcher, regarding your third part of your analysis, did you come to a conclusion, to a reasonable degree, of engineering certainty whether or not the defendant's Lexus collided with Mr. John O'Keefe on the evening of January 29, 2022, around 12:32 a.m.?
Yes.
Before you give me your opinion, I'd like you to share with the jury what that opinion is based on.
Sure. So it's based on the 130 slides you've seen, based on my personal inspection of the Lexus, the correlation of the text stream data with the infotainment data, as well as Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone data. It's looking at, I guess, where the taillight wasn't broken. It's looking at the physical evidence at the scene in terms of taillight fragments, glass fragments, red color in the snow. We have the cell phone data, the location and position of the arm lacerations, the air temperature at the time indicative of sufficient to freeze, the location of the fracture on the back of his head relative to the scientific literature, my testing of forces available falling onto a hard surface, published science on the fracture forces associated with falls. I'm sorry, I'm reading from the report.
Rather than,
I'm reading from my report.
Can you answer without reading from the report?
Probably it's more complete if I read my report.
The objection, Mr. Wilson?
I do on this question, reading from a report to this question, so I'm going to go through some feedback.
So, don't have to read it. Don't open the report.
Okay, doke.
Okay, Dr. Welcher, let me ask you again. Based on your analysis, data available, reviews, study, based on the fact that you are an accident reconstructionist and a biomedical engineer, have you reached an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty whether the defendant's Lexus struck Mr. John O'Keefe on January 29, 2022, around 12:32 a.m.?
Yes.
And could you share the bases of your opinion before I ask you your ultimate opinion?
Sure. So again, you've seen my slide presentation. I've inspected the Lexus. I've looked at where it wasn't damaged. I've inspected the taillight. I got an exemplar Lexus. I ran lower speed contacts to verify that the injury pattern and location on the arm is consistent with the height and orientation of the taillight. I have looked at fracture tolerance data for falling backwards onto hard surfaces. I've looked at the metrics of where his injuries were and what injuries he didn't sustain. I've looked at the cell phone data, and then I've looked at Ms. Reed's interviews as well.
Based on all the evidence you considered, could you share with the jury what your opinion is to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty about whether the defendant's Lexus struck Mr. O'Keefe on January 29, 2022, around 12:32 a.m.?
Go to
I can answer.
Yes, based on the totality of the evidence, DNA, everything I've talked about, that is consistent with that happening with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. That is what happened.
Objection, move to strike, Your Honor.
So I'm going to strike that. I want to see counsel's just